Hello Idle Hero fans, thanks for tuning in today, as I'm going to be covering something a little bit unusual, something I didn't actually think I would have to cover, but apparently it has come up a little bit more in the recent past, and I do apologize for the slightly clickbait title, but it is not entirely inaccurate, and so I thought it was appropriate. But right now, there has been a few people and a few instances where people have been buying and selling accounts on the private server. And I don't think I really need to go into too much detail as to what that can do in terms of like the advantages you would gain. If you're just starting off, if you're playing on the official server, but you don't want to swap over to the private server because you've spent a lot of time and money and you feel like it's going to be very difficult to get the value back out of the private server compared to the official server, it might be much easier to make that transition if you are then enabled to buy an account. So if someone, for example, was in the top of the ladder, this guy here, for example, I am in no way accusing this guy of selling or buying accounts. I'm just using his as an example for right now. But if you were a player on the official server and you wanted to come over, and on the official server you had already had a very successful, very good account that you spent thousands of dollars on, and if this guy all of a sudden wanted to sell his account to you so that you could get through the early stages of the game and be competitive right away, that becomes a very compelling argument, especially if you had already spent thousands of dollars on official. Now, the problem starts to come in with a few different things. The big one that recently we've noticed is that the guilds are going to get shaken up a lot with this kind of stuff, because if one person, for example, if the owner of a guild, or you want to start a new guild tomorrow, and you make that guild, and you have $10,000 that you're willing to spend on this game, and while that seems completely unreasonable for a lot of people, there are definitely people out there who've spent that on official, so it's not even a ridiculous number. You could scale it down, or you could scale it up, depending on which way you want to look at it, and who you are, and how you've played this game, but let's just say you've had $10,000, you could very easily convince a lot of these people who are on the top 50 to sell you their account. And with that being the case, you could essentially make a guild from day one where you've never played the game, you've never had to invest any time into it, and you essentially just bought a very, very top tier guild that you could run entirely yourself just because you were able to spend the money and put it into that type of system. So you bought the accounts, put them in the guild, and then that guild can win guild wars. Now, this is troublesome for a few reasons. The biggest one, obviously, I think most people would agree with, is that the private server is kind of an escape from that pay-to-win element that Idle Heroes generally has. So when you see it get brought back in such a weird way too, it's really unfortunate, because that was the biggest draw for me personally, was that you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to be competitive on this anymore. It's still going to be RNG dependent, of course, but that's a lot better than having to spend a fortune trying to even get good RNG. So seeing that main attraction be torn away is really unfortunate, but that's not the only problem that comes from this. Another big one is that this kind of incentivizes botting a lot more. And I don't want to talk about this too much, because I don't want to make it seem like this private server is run by bots, because it definitely is not. There's a lot of really active players, but there is a small group of people who bot on this server. They have a ton of accounts that are run autonomously, and they just use whichever one is best at any given moment as their main account, or they use a few of them and they just scatter them amongst a few different people, their friends, or whatever the case might be. And that's been going on for quite a while, and the owners of the server know this, and they've dealt with it. To their credit, they have tried to mitigate this, but it's very difficult, especially if it's done on a more small scale. But the problem then lies is that if there is monetary value behind these accounts, it becomes a lot more reasonable and a lot more motivating to actually bot accounts, not even then to play, but then to just flip to other people for money. And that truly screws up the kind of dynamic of the server, where if all of a sudden, if you have enough resources and enough intelligence about how to bot properly, you could dominate the arena yourself with 50 different accounts that are all botted. Now that's a pretty extreme example, but it could definitely get to something like that. Or even if you had just the 10 accounts on the top 50 from the arena that were botted to that success, that would really skew the motivation for a lot of players to continue playing legitimately. And we've seen the effects of stuff like that already. Quite a few players have quit for numerous reasons, be it something like the Aiden shenanigans, or whether or not they feel like their efforts are not as valued as they thought they would have been. And I think this only exacerbates that problem, so we have to really watch out for these kinds of things. And not only that, but even the sellers themselves. Even if you are someone who wants to sell your account, so you agree or you feel that selling should be acceptable, it's actually pretty risky because there's no safe transaction to really be able to do that. The best way you could do it is just through PayPal, and you then have to trust that once you receive the money that the person is not going to charge back the account, because this can definitely happen. And while I'm sure there might be ways for the owners of the server to then give you back your account if enough information was provided to prove that this had happened, the point would be that, say for example, if you sell your account and then you quit the game for a month, or you just quit the game in general and a month goes by and then they charge back the account, so now they have their money back as well as the account you sold them. If you had quit the game, you're probably not even going to want your account back. So basically you've just been forced out of the game, and even if you do get your money back, you have no net gain in the situation at all. And not only that, but if you needed that money that was sold or that was given to you and then it was pulled out of your PayPal, that could actually put you in a financial deficit where now you have to make up for that money, even if you already had it at some point and it's just taken away at a later point. Even if that keeps you at an even point in terms of gain of dollars, you're still going to have to replace that money when you did not expect to, and that can fuck with your budget. So that can really hurt a lot of people. So there is a lot of negatives going into buying and selling accounts right now. So I just want people to be aware of this and be careful about if they're selling their accounts, who they're selling them to, how they're going about it, and if you are like me, you would want this abolished completely. So if you feel that this is something that needs to be dealt with, I would say message Jury and message Meh, and do so respectfully, of course. You don't want to be... I'm not trying to send the mob at anybody here, but if you actually think that this is something that needs to be changed, these are the people you're going to need to talk to, because I can't do anything about this. I can only voice my opinion, and then we can see how people react, and if people agree or if they disagree, they can voice their opinions accordingly. But we do need to figure out how we're going to address this, because this is something that can change the course of the game, can change the way people feel about playing the game, and continue, if they want to even continue playing the game at all. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below as usual, and if you do feel something should be done, definitely contact the GMs. Don't just feel like something will be done, because the way that the private server currently works is that it's mostly a democracy, where if enough people feel something should be done, generally Meh will try to do something. Now, there has been exceptions to that, of course, but you can't dwell on those things. You just have to keep moving forward and do what you can to make the server a better place for everyone to enjoy this game. And if you feel that removing the legality between buying and selling accounts is a part of that, then you should voice that opinion. And of course, don't get me wrong, even if Meh decides to make buying and selling accounts illegal, and therefore if you buy or sell an account, it just gets banned or something of that nature, there are still going to be people botting, there are still going to be people buying and selling accounts, but we would want to minimize this as much as possible and discourage it, especially among some of the more well-known players, because we have had well-known players drop off, sell their accounts. It's completely transparent, it's super obvious, and there's nothing we can do about it, even though it kind of screws with the game. So anyway, guys, I don't want to get too much into this now because I don't feel like I'm kind of beating the bush here. I'm kind of just going around in circles. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure to contact the admins if you do feel one way or the other. Even if you don't agree with me, let them know, because the opinions are the most important thing here when we're trying to figure out what we should be doing and how we should approach this. So anyway, guys, thanks very much for watching and have a great day.